Hi everyone, this is our channel Around My Story. Please like, share, and subscribe.
Hello, my name is Brenda, and this is how I embarrassed myself when I was about 14 years old. Before I tell you my story, let me highlight a few points. All teens experience some amount of anxiety at times. It is actually a normal reaction to stress, and sometimes it even helps them deal with overwhelming situations. For many teens, things like public speaking, final exams, or even going out on a date can cause feelings of anxiety. For some teens, however, anxiety can go beyond these typical symptoms to negatively affect friendships, participation in activities, and even their schoolwork. And do not get me started on how being a teenager is made of the devil's blood. Okay, that was an innocent joke, but I do mean it. So, back to our story. I was sitting in class behind the cutest guy in my grade. His name was Josh, and I just wanted to ask for his phone number, but I was painfully shy and terribly afraid of being rejected. But it was almost time for the school dance. I wanted to go with him, but there was no way on earth I could have done it face to face. I tried to talk myself through the anxiety and convinced myself to actually go through with it. I debated with myself for a while, missing most of that day's in class instructions before I finally decided to ask him. And I did. I did ask Josh for his number, and he agreed. He slowly took my phone, typed in his number, and handed it back to me. I felt relieved. I had finally gotten the number. I mean, I was wrong. There was nothing to be anxious about. I had made it much worse in my mind than it actually was. It was actually nice to realize I was anxious over nothing, to be over it and have his number. I got home later that day and I was so excited to call or text Josh. But because I'm socially awkward, I decided to try and text him. But the message didn't deliver. I checked the number he gave me and noticed that it included the digits 911, which indicated to me that he had given me a fake number. Maybe he was trying to avoid me. I suddenly became aware of how weird I had acted towards him. I didn't have much of a relationship with the guy before asking for his number. There was no rapport between us, so it came across as creepy when I asked him. I also asked him in the middle of class by tapping him on the shoulder. There was nothing smooth or even normal about how I went about it. I hadn't acted immoral, but it was painfully awkward, socially inappropriate, and thus doomed to fail. The encounter was painful, but from it I suppose I learned some lessons on how to appropriately socialize. I also learned that it is incredibly easy to miss obvious signs that other people are giving you when you're anxious, because you're so absorbed with yourself that you miss social cues. Looking back at how he was clearly uncomfortable with my request, which he made clear by not smiling and by hesitating in agreeing to type the number. Had I gotten out of my head and paid attention, I might have noticed how he was acting and how that clearly reflected how he felt about me and our interaction. It makes me question, is having high functioning anxiety easier than being trapped in your own shell, frozen with anxiety? It may be the lesser of two evils, but for me, this experience turned into purpose, and it built my self confidence. I see it as a step, but then improving self esteem and self worth will have you high functioning without anxiety. That is the end game. But you know what? Write your own script. You can't go on if someone else is writing your script. And I know that a lot of kids at school felt the same way. They didn't feel good, and I didn't know why. Kids will relate, and this is so freaky, and it makes anxiety even worse. You have to go to know that you are okay in school, and you cannot know unless you go. Getting over anxiety is not some hippie mumbo jumbo, and it took me years to get over what I call life fright. And I learned that the very hard way. Now, does the devil joke make sense?
Most people I saw hated and cursed at me, and some treated me more kindly and gently than usual. It was very confusing, to be honest. I didn't know the reason for people's animosity towards me, but I thought perhaps it had something to do with my mother. Before telling my story, let me introduce myself. My name is Maria. I lived in a poor neighborhood fraught with drugs and death. People who lived there were mostly losers. Growing up, people have always looked at me with disdain, for no good reason. People ostracized me. I had no friends, no one to speak to. When I would return home, I'd ask my mother why people didn't like me. She wouldn't answer. She'd just cry and smile sadly. She would often tell me to ignore people's looks. But how can I ignore the looks of everyone around me? It was the biggest mystery in my life. I didn't know if my father was alive or not. The only thing I knew about my father was how he looked from a picture on our wall. And if I asked about him, my mother would only tell me that he traveled and he never came back, that she didn't know anything about him, almost as if he were dead. But I suspected that she wasn't telling me the whole truth, and I thought people in our neighborhood knew something I didn't. Perhaps that was the reason they hated me so much. Aside from this problem, I was a clever girl at school. I dreamed of having a good position in life to make my mother proud of me. One day, as I was returning home from school, I felt that someone was following me. I turned around once, but saw no one. The second time I turned around, I saw a man. He was wearing a mask. I was afraid, and I ran home to my mother. She was worried, and she just hugged me. It happened a lot after that. It seemed like everywhere I went, that man just happened to be there. I spent a lot of time thinking about it, who that man could be. Eventually, I graduated and got a job with a well-known company. We left our poor neighborhood and rented a flat in a good area. I had almost forgotten about the mystery man who used to follow me often. Then, one day, a poor man came into my office. He handed me an envelope. Smiling, he told me to say hello to Isabella, then disappeared, leaving me with even more questions. Who was he, and how did he know my mother? I returned home, told her about this man, and showed her the envelope. She looked worried and asked me to quickly open it for her. When I did, I found something unexpected. One old photo of him, and a recent one. I didn't know it then, but that man was my father, and all I did was walk away. I curiously began reading the letter. It said, "Dear Maria, I am sorry for everything. Sorry for the suffering I caused you and your mother. Sorry for not being there with you as you grew up. I hope that you can both forgive me. Please tell Isabella that I never forgot about her, or you. I love you two so much." I looked at my mother. She was holding the photographs and crying quietly. So the mystery man who had often followed me home had actually been my father, watching me from afar. I asked my mother, "Why did you hide the truth from me? Why didn't you tell me where my father was all these years?" She replied, "I was afraid to shock you with the news that your father was in prison for killing someone." And I gasped, "Killing someone?" Hi, I'm Camila. Have you ever experienced a life problem? I know everyone has their own problems, but imagine you had to hide something all your life. Do you know what it feels like? If not, let me tell you. My name is Camila. It means beautiful in Arabic, and I really am beautiful, or so I've been told. But I have a problem. I always wear a glove on my left hand anywhere I go, because I'm too embarrassed to show it to anyone. This has become my life problem. You see, I've had 7 fingers on my left hand since birth. My family couldn't afford a surgery to remove these extra 2 fingers. It would have cost a lot of money, and I would have had to travel abroad because we didn't have clever doctors or good hospitals in my area. So I've been wearing a glove on my left hand since I was young, as a temporary solution for this problem. People always ask me about the glove, but I never answer. I just say that my fingers get cold. You would see me in the summer wearing a short, sleeveless blouse and a glove on my left hand. There were a lot of things I had to give up because of my hand. Once, I wanted to play gymnastics. My mom was okay with it, so I went to many places to train, but they all refused to accept me because of my 7-fingered hand, which they considered to be a problem. At school, my classmates would laugh and ridicule me a lot, so I never had a lot of friends, just a few. I got into the college of my dreams. I thought that people might stop this bullying, so I considered taking off the glove. But I was afraid, because I was going to join a new society, so I didn't. I went with the glove instead. I was surprised at the amount of bullying at college, more than I had ever seen. It was a good thing that I decided to wear my glove. There were a lot of bullies there. Then, something happened. It became a turning point in my life. One time, while I was standing and speaking with my friends, one of them suddenly pulled off my glove. This glove was old and wasn't very tight on my hand. I had been intending to buy a new one after school, but they all discovered my secret. Some were astonished, while others started making fun of me and bullying me. I stopped going to university for a whole week. People blamed me for something that wasn't my fault, but that was the story of my life. If I hid away now, I'd be in this mess forever. So I decided never to wear that glove again. I decided to face my fears. I am beautiful enough to live a good life. I decided to ignore all the bullies and take care of myself. I went to my college. I didn't care about people's opinions. I focused on my studies, had great success, and proved to myself and to others that I was not disabled. The disabled can't think or succeed. Later, when I was attending a lecture by a famous doctor, he noticed my hand and offered to operate on it and make it look normal. This surgery would be the first of its kind in my country, and I accepted. When I saw my hand after the surgery, I couldn't believe myself. Bullying can ruin people's lives, but as they say, no one can make you feel inferior without your consent. I don't really like Indian movies because the actors are always overreacting, and the movies are not logical at all. But this is just my personal opinion. However, I've discovered that there are stories stranger than Indian movies. Let me give you a real life example. I'll tell you a story about a young woman named Samantha. Samantha was a beautiful girl with blonde hair and green eyes. She lived with her grandmother after her parents died in a horrible car accident. The whole country read about it. She had many friends, and all the neighbors liked her. They considered her the most beautiful girl in town. Many had proposed to her, but she didn't care much for them. One day, Samantha was walking alone down the street after visiting one of her friends. Suddenly, she had an eerie feeling that someone was following her. She began running and crying for help. Her follower began running and stopped her. He was an ugly man, pointing a knife in her direction. He asked her to hand over her purse. She threw it at him and made a run for it. The man said wait and made to stop her, but another man appeared out of nowhere and punched the thief, who fell unconscious. The brave and good Samaritan picked up Samantha's purse and handed it to her. He was very handsome, with green eyes, soft hair, and an amazing smile. He escorted her back home, and she felt that he was her knight in shining armor. She went inside and hugged her grandmother tight, who was a little surprised but smiled. Samantha was so happy that she gently pulled her grandmother to her feet, and they whirled around and danced playfully. The very next day, she was surprised when she answered the doorbell. Steve, the tall, handsome man, was standing there, holding flowers. He proposed to her, and she said yes. Thus began their love story. Then one day, Samantha was standing in the kitchen preparing dinner. Steve and her grandmother were out, but they were supposed to be back soon. Samantha had everything ready, and she set the table. The house door opened, and Steve walked in. Samantha went to greet him, but she felt dizzy and fainted. Steve quickly took her to the hospital. The doctor congratulated Steve, saying that he was going to be a father. Steve was ecstatic, but Samantha was not. Instead, she was shocked and nervous. She said that she was too young to have kids, that she wasn't ready to be a mother. Steve was taken aback and said, "But why? Don't you want him?" Things were different from that point on. Samantha tried to get an abortion several times, but Steve was always stopping her. She couldn't accept it. She blamed Steve, but Steve couldn't understand her. In her 7th month of pregnancy, Samantha was with her grandmother at the supermarket when she saw a small boy run onto the road. Fearing he might get run over by a car, Samantha quickly pulled the boy off the road to safety. The boy's mother saw what happened and thanked Samantha, feeling so grateful and relieved. Samantha was crying at the moment and replied, "No need to thank me. I'm going to be a mother like you soon." For the first time, she was beginning to feel real affection for the baby. "Forgive me," she silently thought to herself. She tried to contact Steve many times to tell him that she had finally accepted. She was ready to become a mother, but he never responded. Finally, the day had come. Samantha went to the hospital to give birth. After the surgery, she was very tired. Nevertheless, when she woke up, she immediately asked for the baby. Her grandmother handed her the child. It was a daughter, and she was so beautiful. The nurse tried to take the baby out of her arms, but Samantha refused, wanting to hold her for as long as she could. The next day, Samantha heard a big commotion, and she had a feeling of dread that something bad had just happened. It was confirmed when she saw her grandmother's face. She asked what had happened, and her grandmother told her that a child was missing and had apparently been kidnapped. Samantha's pale face slowly pleaded, Please don't tell me that it was my daughter. When her grandmother nodded, Samantha broke down and began crying and wailing in pain. The nurses tried to calm her down, and when she did, her grandmother came over to her and handed her a note. It had been found in her missing daughter's hospital crib. It was in Steve's handwriting. It simply said, "If you don't want her, I do." Then Samantha fainted. For many years, she tried finding her baby, but couldn't. Steve and her daughter had vanished into thin air. She felt as if time had stopped for her, but Steve didn't feel that way. He raised their daughter into a beautiful young woman. He named her Margot. Whenever Margot asked about her mother, Steve would always tell her that her mother was dead, but he often told her stories about her mother and how much he had loved her. Margot's intuition, however, told her that her father wasn't being completely honest with her and that he was hiding some big dark secret. One day, Steve fell ill unexpectedly. He called Margot to him and told her that he was very sick and felt that he was going to die soon. He said that he wanted to reveal a secret that he had long kept from her, that her mother was actually alive, and that her name was Samantha. He told her that he had kidnapped her from the hospital at birth because her mother did not want a child. He regretted it and asked Margot to forgive him. He gave her Samantha's address, and soon after, he died. After his death, Margot decided to go looking for her mother. I am Margot, and I am now standing at my mother's address. At her front door, I cannot predict my mother's reaction when she answers the door and I introduce myself as her daughter, but I'm going to hug her and tell her that I've missed her for so long. I am addicted to food. I suffer a lot. I need help. I've tried to give up, but I fail every time. Hamburgers. Who can give up eating hamburgers, especially with barbecue sauce? I didn't mind this kind of addiction, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me begin by introducing myself. I am Patricia, 15 years old, living with my parents and my brother. I lead a quiet life. No interests, no hobbies, except for eating, that is. Food is my faithful friend. It never leaves me. It is my partner, my soulmate. But having food as your soulmate has insidious side effects. A dark side, if you will. It denies me a healthy life, robs me of the energy to play, and causes me to sleep excessively. I would much rather stay at home with a bag of potato chips than go out and exercise. My soulmate ultimately betrayed me, though, last Thanksgiving at my granny's home. She lives in a state nearby. Granny was a clever doctor and an excellent cook at that. She could conjure up something really delicious. On that day, she had prepared barbecue turkey with nuts and other secret recipe ingredients. The taste was so great, as if it had descended from heaven itself. I felt like I was fighting a food war, and I had to win at all costs. I ate and ate and ate. I don't know why, but I just couldn't control myself. I attacked that turkey like it was the last on the planet. But every culinary war with a worthy adversary, such as the barbecued turkey, has its own unique type of casualties. Suddenly, I found myself unable to breathe. I fell to my knees and passed out. The turkey had won. I woke up later in the hospital, though, still clinging to an unfinished turkey leg. The doctor told me that I was gaining way too much weight. He said that I should be put on a diet. Diet? Man, how I hated that word. It hung over my head like the sword of Damocles. It meant depriving me of my passion, my reason for living. I considered eating vegetables in small amounts to be the worst form of cruel and unusual punishment, the worst form of torture imaginable. Imagine thinking of a wonderful, greasy, cheese-laden pizza with all the toppings, and then suddenly opening your eyes to find a healthy green salad bowl. But I had reached a turning point in life. One day, my brother was playing on the street, while I was sitting at home gazing longingly at a tempting piece of cheesecake, just sitting there, taunting, daring me to eat it. I struggled mightily to resist the urge, but in the end I succumbed and wolfed it down like a starving animal. Shortly afterwards, I began feeling dizzy, but I was unable to call for help this time, and then I passed out again. I was taken to the hospital. While lying in the hospital bed, half conscious, I overheard the doctor say to someone, "She needs to stop eating or it will be the death of her." I thought to myself, whoa, death? So I made up my mind right then, right there. I resolved to fight a new war, a war against my appetite. On our way back home, I told my father that I wanted to see a nutritionist. He was delighted to hear that. Later, at the clinic, the doctor welcomed us in. She told me how to overcome my eating fetish. She gave me a strict diet regimen with a schedule full of healthy meals. I kept telling myself that winning this war was possible. I simply had to be patient and persevere. I stuck to the strict diet and did some physical workouts. My parents supported me wholeheartedly. I was enthusiastic. I can totally do this. A week passed quickly, and I eagerly visited the doctor to receive some good news. When the doctor weighed me and told me that my weight hadn't changed at all, I was crestfallen. She looked at me and asked me, how was this possible? I told her I didn't know, because I was following her diet thoroughly, though it did require a tremendous effort on my part. Another week passed, and again I went to the doctor. The results were the same. She said to me, Patricia, are you sure you're following the diet I prescribed for you? I said yes. She sat there wondering. Then she told me with a puzzled look on her face, it's odd, but your weight is increasing, not decreasing. This unexpected piece of news mystified me. Another week passed. No change. The doctor was nonplussed. I returned home with a dejected look on my face. My father asked me what was wrong. When I told him, he laughed. Do you believe that? My father actually laughed at my predicament. I was furious. He gestured an apology with his hand and then told me that it was my own fault. I was puzzled. What are you talking about? He told me that I had been sleepwalking to the refrigerator every night and eating everything in sight. I was taken aback. I couldn't believe it. Stop acting like you didn't know it, he said. You must have been awake. I replied, no, father, I'm not acting. I was truly unaware that I've been sleepwalking and eating in my sleep. But now that we've finally solved the mystery of the increasing weight, we returned to the doctor with this new information and told her the situation. She laughed and told me that my discipline had denied my body the food it craved, but my brain had refused to cooperate and had overridden my will by urging me to eat in a subconscious state. She told me not to worry, though, that she could treat that. Armed with this knowledge and her support, and the support of my family, I felt that I could finally win this war.
Hello there, my name is Pearls. The first day of my professional life was the worst professional day ever. During my first year at college, I wanted to spare my parents some of the expenses. So I took a job, and it happened to be the closest thing I could get to my dream job. It was an office that was mainly concerned with planning fashion shows. I know I was only an intern at the moment, but I have never been so excited in my life. I was actually studying fashion designing, so lucky me. But since we all know that life isn't always pink and roses, I had a repulsive boss. Let's call her Jane. I was Employee of the Month 3 times in a row. My life couldn't get any better. Well, except for Jane, who always thought I made her the worst coffee ever, yet she still drinks it. The closest colleague I had at work was a guy named Mark. I also had a tiny little crush on him, but that is not our point here. Anyways, I was supposed to organize a huge event, and so Jane sent an extra long office-wide email giving out details about the event and the brand and who was assigned to do what. I was ecstatic. I was running around the office like a busy bee that had to make sure everything was in place. After a long, tiring day, I was at my desk, rereading the email she sent and enjoying a good cup of coffee. And guess what? Jane had about a gazillion typos, and to be honest, I wanted something to cool me off after doing so much. And being the smart employee that I am, I wanted to crack a good joke and maybe, just maybe, get Mark to laugh. I wrote a sarcastic, full of mockery email, and once I've hit send, I heard gasps echoing around the office, and I realized that I had clicked reply all. Jane called and wanted to see me at her office. My knees were all spaghetti-like, and I wore my heart down my sleeve. And to my greatest surprise, Jane took it too well. She told me, and I'm quoting, I think you have a great sense of humor. She even offered me to become her own personal assistant and the big event hostess. And not after a long time, Jane had ruined my promotion happiness. She showered me with paperwork that I had to stay up until 1 in the morning to get done. And when the big day was finally here and I was getting ready for the event, I got a bit too excited and I went to the office all dressed up. I saw Mark and tried to act as smooth as I could. Well, I tripped over and I ripped off my dress. Jane came out of her office at the same exact moment, and again she saved my life. She lent me one of her super expensive dresses that I'm sure it cost her a big fortune. And that, my friends, was one mistake that I have totally nailed. Hey, my name is Rachel. In high school, the homecoming dance was coming up. I happened to confide that I had a crush on a popular guy to another girl in my class. Unbeknownst to me, they were very, very good friends, and this girl offered to put in a good word for me. The next day, she told me my crush would totally say yes if I asked him. So, in between periods, I found my crush in the hallway, asked him to the homecoming dance, and he said yes. Well, homecoming is on Saturday. Today is Thursday. My crush, his friend, and we went to lunch together and I offered to pay in the hopes that this will make them like me even more. And yes, I was that bad. They tell me they want 2 bags of chips, burgers, fries, and 2 small cartons of chocolate milk. No problem. I go to the cafeteria and get those items like a boss. For some reason, I decided to jog over to them, even though that really only shaves off 10 minutes from my trip, but I still did it. I had 2 bags of chips in my mouth, one in my hand with a burger and fries, the other hand with 2 cartons of chocolate milk. They are sitting in the common area. The common area is carpeted, parallel to the cafeteria, which had a tile floor. These rooms are separated by a relatively small metal line on the floor, and as I meet that line, my left foot catches on the metal. No problem, I have another foot. I will just swing that foot forward real quick and save this. But no, the other foot also catches. As I fall straight forward, I try to catch myself with my hands. Well, one hand had the chocolate milk in it, which just burst out, sending chocolate milk in every single direction. My other hand didn't help me either. It slipped on the burger in the bag and the fries go all over the place. The last thing to break my fall was actually my own face. The face with 2 bags of potato chips in my mouth. You know those jokes about chips bags being full of air? Well, they're actually true. As my face collided with the ground, both the bags of chips exploded at the same exact time and it sounded like a gunshot. Somehow one of my shoes just flew off. I tried to melt into the ground and fade out of existence for a moment, and this happened at the meeting point of the common room and the cafeteria. So everyone in both rooms either saw or heard this fiasco and looked over. About 100 students. It's deadly silent for a couple of seconds and then comes the laughter. And dear God, the laughter. It was like a jet engine. Every person there was laughing the hardest they have ever laughed in their whole lives. I even saw the janitor doubled over laughing, bracing himself with a mop handle. A teacher was trying to walk over to help me, but she stopped every couple of feet to use her whole body to laugh at me. All of this happens not 10 feet away from the table in which my crush and his friends were sitting. Everyone is having a great laugh, but my crush has the greatest laugh of all. He has fallen to the ground, with one hand bracing himself on his knees. The other hand is clutched at his ribs as he laughs so hard that no sound comes out. He was wheezing like a dolphin. There is no recovery from this. I walked to the bathroom to clean myself up. The teacher could only manage to hand me my shoe along the way and continue laughing. In the bathroom, the laughter did not die at all for what seemed like a lifetime. When the bell rang, I was still in the bathroom and people were still laughing. While I spent the whole day wallowing in easily the most embarrassing moment of my life, I thought, well, maybe I'm just a funny girl and he will like it. The next morning, I see my crush before class and he walks up to me and he says, So homecoming is tomorrow. Eager not to speak about the shit show that happened yesterday, I just excitedly said, "Yes, yes, it is." And then he delivers a crisp and says, so this girl that I actually like asked me to go to the dance with her, so I think I'm gonna go. To which I replied, yeah, that makes sense. I totally did not go in the bathroom and cry after that. Anyways, my crush said he will go to homecoming with me. The day before, I tripped with his lunch and face planted into a pool of random ingredients in front of the entire class. My crush did not go to the homecoming dance with me. I usually host a slumber party once a month, so my girlfriends already know the drill. They bring their jammies, blankets, nail polish, hair products, lots of snacks, candies, and chocolates, but this time, Lucy brought wine. She had to sneak the wine in my house because my mom is kind of strict when it comes to drinking. My dad is almost never home. My mom sleeps really early, so we kinda had the house all to ourselves. We put on onesies, random dresses, and some costumes. My favorite is the Cinderella dress, and I still like wearing it even if I'm 17 now. We're all 17. I have three best friends, Lucy, Ashley, and Sheila. We have lots of fun and lots of secrets together. Sometimes I wish time would stop so we can always have each other. I know time will come that I will be separated from them. College will happen, and we'll have different lives in different circles. At least for now, we can be silly high school kids. We have an ideal high school life. We all have boyfriends, but mine is the most popular one. Well, I'm pretty popular at my school too. I also do well with academics. None of my friends are failing or anything. We're not the typical popular cheerleaders with no brains type. We do not have family drama. Our social life is great. We have the best high school life ever. While dancing and partying all night, Lucy came up with an idea. She said, "Let's play Truth or Dare." We got giddy because we know the night is going to get crazy. We sat down, forming a circle, then Lucy spun the bottle, and the bottle chose me. Truth or dare? Truth. Not in the mood for a dare yet, I said. Pick a question. They prepared some questions on a piece of paper and put them inside a fishbowl. If you could choose to be someone else for tonight, who would you choose and why? Lucy asked. I just laughed and said, "What a lame question. I don't want to be anybody else. I'm awesome. I have an awesome life." "Cheers to that," they said. The night passed and I woke up in the middle of the night because I felt like someone was watching me, but when I woke up, no one was around. I don't know how, but my feet just started moving. I walked like I was trying to follow something or someone. My gut feelings are trying to bring me somewhere. Then, in the middle of the darkness in our backyard, I swear I heard footsteps. I felt a sting on my left shoulder. Something poked my shoulder. I removed it. I guess it's a tranquilizer? And then I passed out. From here on, listen carefully because I guarantee you're going to love this story. It's like a movie, and I cannot believe that this thick plot is actually my life. I tried putting together the stories that happened while I was gone, and someone else was being me. I know it sounds complicated, but before I proceed, do not forget to subscribe and hit the bell button for notifications. So here it goes. Someone tranquilized me, and I instantly fell asleep. By the way, my name is Nancy. You have met my friends, and I'm sure you'd like to know who drugged me and what the motive is. Meet Patricia. At first, I had no idea why she looked exactly like I do. I thought I was dreaming. Before passing out, I asked her who she was. She told me that her name is Nancy. She was obviously messing with me. Then she told me that her name is Patricia, and that she's my twin, and she would love to be Nancy instead. What? I did not believe her because I don't have a twin sister. My mom and dad would never keep any secrets from me. Or would they? She said that she was kept by our parents in a mental institution a couple of hours away from our town, ever since we were 3. I just realized that I have no recollection of any kind of memories when I was only 3 years old. At first I thought, wow, is this really happening? I just think I watched too much TV. But this is reality. How did it happen? Let me tell you how it happened. Well, at first, she tranquilized me while I was asleep. I think she had other people with her who dragged me into a pickup, covered my mouth, tied me up, and blindfolded me. And then they brought me into a dark basement, I think. I'm not sure, because when I woke up, everything was just a blur. I only saw her face. I thought I was looking in the mirror. She told me everything that I needed to know. Well, her version of the story. I was shocked, but I would like to know my mom and dad's version of the story as well. Patricia told me that they got her locked up in a mental institution with special care. My mom did not like the idea, but eventually agreed when Patricia looked at her and said, "Daddy's next." I got the chills, but she never told me the reason why she ended up in the mental institution. She has been following me ever since we were 14 years old. One of the security staff has got a crush on her, so she's able to go in and out when no one is looking. She wants me dead because she would like to replace me and have my awesome life. She said she would take revenge on mom and dad for depriving her of having a life like I do. It got me worried, but she made me powerless. For the second time, she injected me again, so I passed out. Next thing I remember, I'm in a dark room with just a bed, a pillow, and a blanket. This must be her room. I'm locked inside the mental institution, just like in the movies. She managed to make my friends believe that she is me. She's clever. They went shopping, they partied, and they did not even realize that something was wrong. She must really be pulling it off. Even my parents and my boyfriend are not suspecting a thing. But our prom is almost here. Me and my friends are all excited for it. But I think I have to give up the dream of going since I'm locked up in here. I just miss my friends, I miss my parents, I miss my boyfriend, and I miss my life. It hurts me that I've been missing for a while, and they didn't even notice or feel that it's Patricia and not me. She's just a stranger to them. After 1 week, I made friends with the security staff. They kept on asking why I was so kind and polite to all of them. I tried to tell them the truth, but they just made me drink some medicine because they thought I was hallucinating. Then a surprise happened. My parents visited me. I mean, they visited Patricia? I don't know. When I saw them, I gave them a hug. "I miss you. I'm so glad you're okay. Are you guys hurt or anything?" My mom answered, "Honey, why would we be hurt?" I know my mom would believe me. My dad's judgment is not always the best. "Mom, this is me, Nancy. She switched us. She tied me up and she hurt me." And then my dad interrupted. "Enough, Patricia." "Dad, I am Nancy." I said enough. "You've pulled this trick before, and why on earth do you think this is going to work again?" I pleaded so hard, but my dad threatened that they would leave if I still insist. So I just cried. I love my dad, but he's never around, so no wonder we don't have a great relationship. I wonder if he even knows when my birthday is. I mean, our birthday. But then again, I don't want to judge him. I know he's just trying to be tough. But I looked at my mom. I can see in her eyes that she truly feels sorry for me, whether she thinks I'm Nancy or Patricia. "Honey, I know things haven't been great, but a promise is a promise." "A promise?" "Yes, we will not break our promise, which is when your doctor says you're ready to go, we will bring you back home." I cried and I had a meltdown. I just couldn't help it. "Mom, I am Nancy. Please believe me, please." My dad ordered the staff to drag me out of their sight, but when they tried to grab me by my arms, I resisted, so my shirt got torn apart, baring my shoulders. My parents saw this, and they were shocked. My mom pointed on my left shoulder. Well, I had this weird birthmark on my left shoulder. Maybe they recognized it. My mom looked at my dad and said, "She is Nancy." My dad told the staff to leave us alone to talk. He gave me a hug and said, "I'm sorry." "How did this happen? Why are you here? When did you meet your twin sister?" My mom said, I told them how Patricia executed her plan, but I asked them how they knew it was me. They looked at each other. My dad gave my mom a slight nod as if saying it's time to let me know. When you were 3, I left you and Patricia upstairs to play. When I got back, I saw you on the floor with a pencil stabbed on your left shoulder. We saw Patricia holding a hammer, and your head was also bleeding, which resulted in loss of your memories. We thought you were dead. My mom did not finish the story. She started crying while leaning on my dad's chest. My dad continued, "The doctors said that if we wasted just a couple of seconds more, you might not be with us." And he let out a sigh. I have an uncle with the same situation as Patricia. The genes must have passed on to her. I'm sure that there's something wrong with her. So even at a young age, we made a special program for her to be admitted here. We had high hopes that she will become normal. I absent-mindedly responded, "You recognized me because of the scar on my shoulder? I thought it was just a weird birthmark. What are you gonna do with Patricia now?" Mom and Dad went home and proceeded to my room right away. Patricia didn't know that my parents are aware of what happened. They gave her a hug. My parents apologized to her. "We are sorry. We love you, and this is the only way we know you would be better." She instantly knew that my parents knew, and she ran away. My mother called the police but instructed them to never hurt Patricia. Patricia is a very smart girl. She went to a party with Lucy, Sheila, and my boyfriend. She told them, "I have a twin sister and she's trying to kill me." They just all laughed at her. Then I arrived, but instead of making things better, it validated her statement. "Oh my goodness, there's 2 of you?" my boyfriend said. I said, "Guys, it's me, Nancy." "Do not believe her, I'm Nancy, she's my evil twin," Patricia said. "Come on, this is me, we all grew up together," I said. Then I looked at my boyfriend. "Babe, you seriously didn't know it wasn't me?" "Babe, don't listen to her," Patricia said. "Can someone prove who the real Nancy is, please?" Sheila said. I had no choice but to reveal the secrets we have just to prove that I am the real Nancy. My friends got convinced in no time. They all ran to my side and were afraid of Patricia. Instead of helping, my boyfriend Marco, he ran away. "Seriously, I think you should break up with him," Patricia told me. Then to our horror, she pulled out a gun and pointed at us. We all gasped. "I enjoyed having your life, and I'm trying to make it permanent. Oh, by the way, you got accepted to Harvard, but I think I'll be the one going there instead." She pulled the trigger, but surprisingly, Marco jumped in front of the bullet. Turns out he just left to call the police. He went back because he knows something bad is going to happen. Marco was shot, but we heard the police siren. Patricia fired another shot, but thankfully the police were able to stop her. Now, let's fast forward to the prom day. 2 weeks ago, when Marco got shot in the shoulder, and Patricia was put back in the mental institution with more security this time. Good thing is, Mom and Dad decided to visit her more often to help her recover. The doctor said she would be better if we always visited her. I enjoyed the prom. We danced all night, and I finally shared my first kiss with Marco. But the sad part is, we decided to break up. We are going to different colleges, and I know that our relationship should not weigh us down. We could have a lot of opportunities. We made a pact that if ever we finish college after 4 years and we're still single, then we'll be back together. Before taking off to college, I visited Patricia. I know she hates me, but I told her that I love her, and I forgive her. I also made a deal with her that every summer I will visit and make memories with her. I told her that I would like to get to know her, and here I am now. After 4 years, I graduated at Harvard University. I majored in psychology, and I'm doing research now with my colleagues about Patricia's case. As for Marco, well, he's already taken. While I was gone, he took care of Patricia, just like how I always requested during our phone calls. He got to know her and he fell for her, because despite her crazy mind, a good heart is lying within. Weird, I know, but that is how life goes. Besides, Patricia deserves a second chance, just like everyone else.
Hey everyone, my name is Gwen. My story is different from anything you've ever heard before in your life. We all have grandparents, and we all love them very much. When they die, they leave an empty space in our hearts. It's never easy. My grandpa died a year ago. Before he died, he left me an old weird looking chest, which I never thought to open before, until today. I opened the chest, but all I found in it were two pieces of paper. One of them had only two words, Grandpa's house, and the other had a map drawn on it. I thought for a while, then I decided to go to my grandpa's old house and check things out. So, I went to the house. As I took out the key to open the door opened wide. There was no one else there. I was scared, but I was curious to find out more about the map. So I went in. As soon as I got inside, the door slammed shut behind me. I was shocked and scared, but I wasn't gonna back out now. The house looked so creepy and eerie, like it was abandoned for 100 years, and it felt so cold, cold, like standing on ice. I opened the map in my hands and looked around. It showed the inside of the house. I followed the path till I reached the door. When I stood in front of it, it opened slowly on its own. Terrified, I took 2 steps back, but I glimpsed a shadow inside, so I moved forward. I stepped in, but with nothing under my feet, I fell, rolling over down the stairs. It wasn't a room, it was the basement. I tried to get up, but there was something on my legs. Of course, it was too dark to see what it was. Every time I take it off, it falls back again. I looked for my phone, but it wasn't in my pocket. Oddly enough, when I looked again, it was there. I took it out, and I turned on the flashlight, and there was my surprise. On my legs was the bony arm of a skeleton. I kicked it away and stood up quick. I lit around the room with my phone, but it was full of skeletons all over. Of course, no need to tell you I was scared the heck out of my wits. What happened next was beyond the understanding of an average person. The eyes of one of the skeletons turned bright red, and they were staring right at me. My feet started moving backwards automatically, and I found 2 bony hands clasping my neck. I freaked out, but then, suddenly, all the skeletons moved and stood in 2 lines, clearing a path for me. The map in my hand was glowing and indicating a place in the room. I moved towards it, slowly, as my knees buckled together. There was a huge chest. When I opened it, I found a ton-load of money. Strangely enough, all the skeletons had disappeared, and the furniture in the room was floating around the air. I got scared, and I ran for it, but I came to the stairs, and I found the door locked. It wouldn't open. The skeletons appeared around me once again, and they were pulling me off the stairs. I soared through the air and landed on the chest. Then I was out cold. When I came to, I found myself inside the chest, like it was a coffin of some sort, and I was lying inside, feeling numb all over. I could see the sky, but it was cloudy. I felt like I was being buried. Then I heard a voice. It said, "Welcome to your grandpa's treasure." This is what happens to people like me, dumb people like me who follow a stupid map to look for their grandpa's worthless treasure. They'll tell you their stories from their graves. Hello everyone, I'm Lauren. Did you ever wonder what it would be like to have your life completely destroyed by someone close to you? Ever thought about what you would do then? I didn't have time to think, because that's exactly what happened to me. It all started 2 years ago. I lived a quiet life with my mom and dad and my sister. I loved my family. We were always together. We were happy until that fateful day. My dad got fired from his work, a big company. He had worked there for 20 years. The only money we had then was what he had managed to save over the years. Finding a new job wasn't easy. It was a hard time for all of us, especially my dad. He was becoming desperate. At times, he just sat there, quietly, deep in thought, and I rarely saw him smile since. One late night, we were still up waiting for him when he walked through the door. But something was different. He wasn't walking straight. It was the first time in my life seeing him drunk. I decided to take matters in my own hand. I started job hunting. I was lucky enough to find something suitable at a startup company. The pay was good enough, and the more I worked, the more I earned. I was trying my best to get our life back. I was giving it all I've got. My dad started asking me for money. I was more than happy to give him what he needed. I didn't even ask what it was for. Then he started asking for more. He came late almost every night, and he was never awake in the morning. It seemed like we hadn't talked together for ages. Then, money started disappearing from my purse. I got home from work one night. It had been a long day, and I was really tired. I put my bag in my room, and I went to the kitchen to find something to eat. I made myself a sandwich, then took it back to my room. But when I got to the door, I saw a shadow moving inside. I thought everyone was asleep, so I opened the door slightly and looked inside. I couldn't believe what I saw. My dad was standing over my bag, and my wallet was in his hand. He found no money in it, so he threw it on the bed and started going through my purse. At that moment, my mom came down the stairs. She had my dad's shirt in her hands and a small pack of white powder. I looked at her face. Her eyes were filled with tears. I tried to speak, but found nothing to say. My dad came out of my room. He saw us standing there. Suddenly, everything changed. He tore the shirt and the pack from my mom's hands. He was hysterical. He started breaking things around him. My mom and I were too scared to move, but then my sister came running down the stairs. He pulled her towards him and held a knife to her throat. He threatened to kill her if we didn't give him money. Without a moment's thought, I did what he asked. Things only got worse. Nothing was ever enough. He asked for more and more money, and if I refused, he'd get violent, beating up anyone in his path. I couldn't stand by and watch, so I would just give him what he wanted, until I decided enough was enough. He barged down the stairs one evening and asked for all the money I've got. I told him we had expenses to pay, the rent, school fees, but none of it mattered to him. He asked me again for the money and threatened me if I didn't do what he asked. I refused. He hit me so hard that I crashed my head against the wall and fell to the floor, bleeding. Everything went dark. My mom took me to different hospitals, and I had to do a lot of checkups and tests, but all the doctors said the same thing, that this was it. I was sentenced to live my life in darkness, never to see the light again. Bumping my head against the wall was one of the reasons, but apparently, my psychological state played a huge role in my recovery. The doctors suggested that I be taken to a psychiatrist. My dad felt sorry for what he had done to me. He quit the drugs and alcohol, tried to be proper, but it was because of him that I was in this state. I didn't know if I could ever find it in myself to forgive him. I was torn inside. He was my dad, but I couldn't forget what had happened. I stopped talking shortly after, and he left, disappearing from our lives. No one knew where he was or what he was doing. A year had passed, and he came home. He sounded good, kind of like how he was before. He's trying to make up for what he had done. But to me, nothing he does makes a difference anymore. I'm still in the dark. That's something I'm gonna have to live with my whole life. I can't change that. What do you think I should do?
I adore detective adventures and solving puzzles that others can't. I'm crazy about this. I love challenges and mysteries. I'm Ramon. But my father's nickname for me is Megamind. I'm 14 years old, and I'm typically ranked number 1 in my class every year. I have become famous for solving riddles. Many comers have tried to unseat me, but all have failed. I love to examine minute details. But let me get on with telling you my story. One hot summer, we had just finished our exams at school and were going on summer break. So I organized a trip to the beach with my friends. Beach weather is amazing. Clear skies, cool ocean breezes, sand, and sun. Just amazing. One day, before my beach trip, my mother handed me a letter from my grandmother. I was surprised and thought it was a little weird because Granny owned a hotel in the surrounding area nearby. It had wonderful views all around it. I had opened the letter, which read, "Dear Ramon, how are you? I hope you're enjoying your summer break. Would you mind spending a couple of days with me? I have a serious matter that I would like to discuss with you. Granny." Initially, I thought that it was probably some silly matter, but then my inner voice told me that it might be important. I was conflicted between going on my beach trip or visiting my granny. I decided to visit Granny first. She was family after all, so off I went. Though my grandmother lived in a beautiful area, the closer I got to the hotel, the more my inner voice was nagging me. When I arrived at the hotel, Granny was waiting for me. She smiled and hugged me. I had missed her so much. She had company. Raul, her maintenance man, and Malika, her housekeeper and assistant. There weren't any guests in the hotel at the time, and I asked her why. Her face changed, and she said that was what she wanted to speak to me about. So we went to her room to talk. She then proceeded to tell me that the hotel was haunted. "Haunted?" I exclaimed. "What makes you think that?" Granny said, "The hotel has evil spirits that frighten the guests at night." I didn't want to believe it, but I knew Granny was a rational person. I suspected there was more to this than meets the eye, so I decided to investigate this intriguing mystery. On my first night at the hotel, I waited until midnight. Then I lit a candle and walked through the halls of the hotel. There were photos on the wall, and I could hear whispering and the rustle of the leaves outside. It was a little spooky and unsettling, and made my blood run cold. Suddenly, I heard laughing on both sides of the hotel, and a shadow passed quickly in front of my eyes. Unnerved, I quickly returned to my room, where soon afterwards I heard something scratching on my door. I kept thinking to myself, I am not afraid. I am not afraid. Then the door began opening slowly. I saw a hand on the doorknob. Then the owner of the hand came into view. It was a cloaked, headless man holding a candle. I fainted. The next day, I woke up to find Granny and Malika standing beside me. Granny told me that I had been sleeping a long time. I asked what had happened, and they told me they heard me scream and came to my aid. When they found me, I was unconscious on the floor. At that moment, there was a knock on the door. It was Raul bringing me a drink. That was when I noticed something strange about Raul's face. It was emotionless. Then I glanced at his hands as I accepted the drink from him. That night, I again walked around the hotel. I found some steps at the end of a corridor that led to the basement. Down in the basement, I opened a maintenance door and found a tape recorder and a pile of clothes on a table. Suddenly, the lights went out. I was groping around in the dark and trying to find my way back when I heard the laughing again. Still, I continued stumbling ahead through the dark. I stepped on an electrical line and tore it off the wall. I returned to my room. My door opened slowly. I was hiding behind the door. I grabbed the loose electrical detonator and touched it to the doorknob. It was live, and I heard a grunt from the owner of the hand on the other side of the door as he or she was shocked. And I heard him or her fall to the floor. It took me a while to find the electrical panel, but I managed to get the lights back on. When I did, I found Raul laying unconscious on the floor next to the doorknob that I had electrified. I called Granny and Malika down to the basement. Granny asked what had happened. I replied, "Granny, you really need to screen your employees better. Raul was your ghost." Granny looked shocked and asked me what made me think that. I explained that the hand on my drink today was the same hand I saw on the headless ghost that opened my hotel room door the night before. I also found tools, a tape recorder, and some ghost clothes down here in the basement. In addition, I found the earphones that had been placed around the hotel. Granny was shocked. Raul woke up about that time, and she grilled Raul. "Why are you scaring all my guests away, Raul?" He said, "This hotel used to belong to my family, but you bought it from my grandfather. Well, I wanted it back. Please forgive me." Malika said, "We have to call the police." But I said, "No, wait, I have an idea. Let's renovate and reopen the hotel with a new name. The Haunted Hotel. Our advertising slogan will be, spend a night in a haunted hotel. Raul can do his ghost thing with the whispers and the laughing. Why, he can even flicker the lights off and on at a random time once or twice a night just to give the hotel a spooky atmosphere." The idea proved to be a big hit. The haunted hotel attracted many tourists, and Granny's business prospered. I had a nice holiday and still managed to fit in my trip to the beach on my summer break.
Hello, I'm Sarah. Ever heard of a phobia before? Don't worry, it's not contagious or anything. It just means you're scared of something in particular. Places, people, things. I have a phobia, but I don't like to talk about it. And I definitely don't want to be seen in that state. I was in my second year at college. I had been very busy that semester because we had a lot of assignments, and it was fine. I mean, I liked studying and completing tasks, but I was never a nerd or a geek.